Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Widow podcast. I am absolutely delighted to be able to bring along to the Widow podcast the lovely Lauren from I'm Sorry We're Friends on Instagram. Lauren is incredible, obviously a widow herself and a mum, and shares so much wisdom on her page on Instagram. Some of your posts, Lauren, on there, they blow me away. You know, you have such a wonderful way of sharing your story and putting your experience into words. It really touches so many hearts. And I know we've spoken before, haven't we? We've done a live or two, I think, on Instagram historically. But I wanted to invite you onto the Widow podcast because you really do share your story so well, and I think so many will resonate with you and your experience, but also, you know, that the hope that you offer in terms of going through the experience, the grief, but being able to find light in a dark place as well. So welcome, and thank you for coming along, Lauren.
Thank you. It's such an honor. I'm so proud of you too. What an amazing opportunity that you've given yourself, because you are light as well. And I know that we both kind of found each other in this crazy Instagram world. And I was so drawn to you even before you had your podcast and you were doing your coaching. And I'm so grateful that you have been given this chance.
Oh, it's lovely, isn't it? You know, and I do have a love-hate relationship with social media, because there are sides of it that don't work so well, but there are sides of it that are brilliant, and you are definitely one of those sides. You know, I've loved reading about you and your story, and like I say, your words just touch a place in your heart. You know, you do have a gift, and writing is something that comes very naturally to you. You're brilliant at it. But I mean, I'm sure most people do know you, but for those that don't, do you want to share your story, Lauren, and what happened?
Of course. Kevin? Yes. So Kevin and I were together for about 9.5 years. We had been married for about 3.5 years and had a little 14-month-old when Kevin, on November 23rd of 2019, had gone off on a mountain bike ride with his race team and never came back. So he was supposed to come home at 12 o'clock that afternoon, and I had been text messaging him and no response. And so I had taken Lawson. Kevin was notorious, and I think I told you this before, but he was notorious for always being late. He ended up grabbing a beer after a ride or finding a friend at one of the local houses and hanging out. And so I didn't really think much about it at first. And so I was in my master's program, and my mom had been watching Lawson that morning, and I knew I needed to get home. I was at the coffee shop, so I grabbed Lawson, kind of relieve my mom of her duties, and went to my favorite store, Target, and was running around. And I knew that Kevin and I had made plans to go to the local zoo around 2 or 3. And so I'd gotten home about 2, and he still wasn't home. And we did have GPS on our phones because he did do a lot of night rides. He was on a mountain bike team, and he also he was a cyclist, so he would ride home from work at night. And so we had GPS just in case anything did happen, or like I couldn't get a hold of him, I could find out where he was. So I had looked at his GPS even before I left for Target, and he was on this road, La Honda Drive in Escondido, just about 15 minutes from our home. And when I looked again, he was still in that same location. And so I had messaged him in a panic, really, if you don't message me back, I'm going to come to where you are. I don't know what's going on, if this isn't like you. And so I started thinking, okay, who is he with? I didn't really know a lot of his teammates' phone numbers, but I did know their wives. So I had reached out to a wife, and she gave me a number of one of the men that he was with. And so I called Mark, and Mark wasn't expecting my phone call. And so he did answer, and just instantly went silent when I told him that it was me. And I had kind of been like, where are you guys? Are you guys having a beer? This is crazy. What are you guys doing? And I remember I was in the living room, and I was staring at Lawson. He had just started to learn how to walk, like just a few weeks before. And so I was kind of like at his level and helping him walk around. And the next thing that Mark said was, "Are you home with anyone? Is there anyone there that can be with you?" And I just instantly knew that this isn't Kevin crashed and is in the hospital. I knew that this was the real deal. And I started screaming and everything kind of just went numb. I like fell to the ground and I just asked him multiple times, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" And he said, "I'm going to be over there in just a minute." And I hung up on him and I called my mom and I called my sister and I'm like yelling, "Kevin's dead, Kevin's dead." And no one, everyone was so confused. No one had any idea what I was talking about. And so it felt like hours. I'm sure everyone got over to our house in minutes, and Mark included, and came and told us that Kevin had been with a group of about 7 men, and he and his friend Jills decided they were going to break off from the group for just a few minutes and grab a snack. And so they snacked, and they all had a destination of meeting at the end of, they were in a city park. And so they were going to meet outside of the park. And it was just like this 2-lane road that went into a residential area. And so Kevin and Jills were riding down the hill to meet with the rest of the group. And a man who was high on methamphetamines and drunk on alcohol decided, and we'll never know why, but he decided to drive on the wrong side of the road, going 65 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone, and hit Kevin around a blind curve. So Kevin never saw it coming. He was riding and Jills was right in front of him. So Jills was missed just by inches. But Kevin was hit and killed instantly. And I've told this story, and it's so interesting because I've gotten the feedback of like, "Why didn't anyone tell you?" Because we didn't hear from the police. That happened at 11:52 a.m. and we didn't hear from the police until 6 o'clock that night. But what had happened was it became a crime scene investigation, and had killed Kevin was a felon, and he was on parole and he fled the scene. And so they were still looking for him. And we didn't know any of this at the time. And even the men that were with Kevin that day, that none of them knew. The police had just asked that they did not say anything to us. So Mark was put in a really sticky situation as well, because he was told by the police to not say anything, but then I had called him and he had answered. And Mark is a pastor. And so he's kind of, well versed in loss and knew that he needed to be there with us and to support us. But yeah, I'd gotten a lot of comments over the years when I'd written about my loss, like, "Oh, how did you not know?" And that was one of the reasons it just became a huge thing and was all over the news by the next day. And that in itself is just so wild when you're processing your spouse's death, and then all of a sudden he's all over the place on the news and they're still searching for the person that killed him. So
yeah,
in a wild nutshell, that's how we lost Kevin that day on November 23rd.
So tragic and just
so tragic.
It's I was talking to somebody the other day, and through all the different losses that we have, I think there must be real difficulty in losing somebody from being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Absolutely.
I think, I don't believe in comparing or that there's a worse or a lesser loss, but I think you can notice differences. And for me, Simon died of a heart attack whilst on a bike ride. And there's a part of me that can kind of make peace with the fact that that was meant to happen. There was something medically wrong, physically wrong with his body, and it would have happened at some point had it not have happened at that exact point.
It almost provides us comfort when we can say, "Oh, it was because of A, B, or C that this happened." And yes, I completely agree. I would never say that my process was more difficult than anyone else's. But I do have connected with many, many widows who we've discussed that feeling of just instant loss and the difference between, and I mean, yours was instant also, but like, the traumatic, the instant, the long cancer, type of loss as well. And there is definitely a difference. I don't know in the sense of how hard and how difficult it is. I think they're all difficult. It's never going to be easy to lose someone, that's for sure. But there was a process that I had to go through after Kevin's death of just even, sitting with the anger of someone violating my husband's body in the way that he was violated. I mean, Kevin was a beautiful, healthy 36-year-old man who was taken in such a horrific way and had things done to his body that was just so terrible that that was really, really, I mean, it still hurts, but that the depth of that pain, the sharpness of it isn't there so much anymore. And I didn't realize it until I think I was actually I think I did some like trauma informed therapy in the beginning. And the woman who was running the therapy, she said, we have to process that violation. And I did not realize at all that I was even holding on to that sadness and that anger. And I just thought I was but that I was grieving the loss of my husband. But I'm like, no, I'm grieving so many different layers of his death. For sure.
And I think that's it, isn't it? There's it's different layers with different losses. And I guess when something like that happens, there are extra layers that you have to work through, that, it is traumatic. And I guess it probably, I'm assuming, exacerbates that bargaining side of grief that is talked about. The what if he hadn't done this, or what if he'd been 2 minutes later, or what if he'd just done this, or turned off there, or stayed with the grief. All of that must be just much deeper rooted for you and more to work through. So, I mean, who did you turn to then for support to cope with your grief?
Those first few days were just such a haze. I didn't know up from down. I didn't know what time it was. I was still breastfeeding our son. And I remember my mom saying, well, is it time for him to eat? And I'm like, what time is it? What day is it? I don't even know. And so I feel like the first couple days, everyone carried me, my family. It was my close friends and my family. And I just absolutely leaned on them for everything, because it was an out of body experience. I posted something about this a long time ago, but that this feeling of almost being claustrophobic in my own body, like I just wanted to peel out of my skin. And I think now looking back, it's like you just wanted to peel out of that reality. Like I was like, this is like my brain was trying to process, like, this isn't my life. This has got to be someone else's life. Like I kept feeling like I was in this sci-fi movie, right? And that I was actually the one helping someone else, when in fact my life was on the news and my husband was dead and I was dealing with this and everyone was coming to me. But it was so that beginning phase was really, really challenging, and you have no idea what you need, who can help you. No one can take that pain away from you. So my family, my friends for sure were those who I relied on. And then within a 24-hour period, I got a text message from another widow, and we shared mutual friends, and her name's Ashley, and she's a local widow, and she had lost her husband. He was a firefighter, and he had died in a local fire about the year and a half previous. And basically she just texted me, are you breathing? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this person gets it. They get it. I don't even know how to explain that to most people. They would think, what do you mean? Are you breathing? Of course you're breathing. But everything felt like you had to remind yourself to do those. Breathe in, breathe out, feed your child, feed yourself, drink water. Like nothing was natural anymore. Everything took effort. And so we connected. And then again, like 48 hours after that, I had another woman reach out to me, Shanna Kriza, and her husband was a local fire captain who was hit and killed on his bike, just like Kevin, by a drunk driver, and almost a year previous to the date. And Kevin was killed right before Thanksgiving. And so she was kind of like, listen, I don't know you, but we're sisters. And I'm going to get you through this holiday, and it's not going to feel like a holiday, and you're going to feel numb, and people are going to be going in and out of your house, and you're going to be going in and out of other people's homes, and you're not going to remember it. And I'm here for you, whatever you need. And so speaking to those women instantly made me realize who I needed. And I needed people in my life besides just my family who actually understood that depth of pain that you were going through and could hear all the crazy thoughts coming out of your mind, because there's that too, right? You're also jealous. I was around the holidays. I was jealous that everyone had a Thanksgiving, but I didn't want to tell people because I didn't want to seem selfish. And then here are my girls, and they're like, oh yeah, no, we've gone through this. We've done this.
Yeah.
Take it all out and give it to us, So very, very quickly on, I connected with other widows, and I just knew that was the space that I needed to move forward with life and to heal.
Do you know what? I think coming together with people that really and truly understand what you're going through, it's powerful. It's almost magical, isn't it? It just it can bring, that just silent knowing and not having to explain everything. It's that they know, and it really helps us, I think, feel less alone and less isolated, because people are wonderful, aren't they? And family and friends are wonderful, but it is that feeling of it's only me, and sometimes it feels like this is only happening to me in the whole world. I'm the only one that feels like this, and it's so awful, and I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. And you have awful thoughts. I remember, things I think people don't talk about that you can talk about with your widow sisters. And it was like, why not her husband? Why my husband? He's a jerk. He cheats. He does this. He does that. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking these horrible things about people and people whom I love. Like, what is wrong with me? There's so much guilt associated with death of a spouse and widowhood and all those kind of things too, because it is a very selfish time, and I think you need it, but it's all these thoughts that you're trying to process. They're really heavy, and they're scary to share with people that are outside of that understanding. I remember even saying very early on that if something happened to my son, I'm taking the white flag, I'm done, I'm out. And I wasn't saying, oh, I want to take my life, but I was like, I truly couldn't imagine a life without Kevin and without Lawson. And so I would tell my mom and my sister, like, I could not live this life, and it would terrify them. They were so scared for my well-being. And then again, I would go and I would speak to Shanna and my girlfriend, Amanda and Lauren, all these women who I ended up connecting with. And they were like, oh, we have the exact same thoughts. Like, we know you want to be here. But we also know how terrifying it is, especially back to what you were saying about that instant loss, which you probably experienced as well. It's like, I kissed Kevin in the morning and he never came home. And it was this reality that life is that fleeting, and our last goodbye might be our final goodbye. And so all of a sudden I became terrified of all the people that I loved, especially my son, leaving me. Oh, well, if Kevin could leave, because Kevin was also one of those people that everyone thought was invincible. He was tough, and he had such great skills on the bike. You would think that in any circumstance, he'd be able to get himself out of a situation like that. There were so many things. And so again, that connection to a community of people who get it, because my mom and my sister were like, we need to institutionalize you. We're terrified for you. We're scared for us. We love you so much. We don't want to lose you. And I'm like, I'm not saying what you think I'm saying. I'm just trying so desperately to get across like all these fears that are coming to me now. And so, just having that group, it really, there's nothing, it was the life vest that I needed in that moment.
Yeah. And do you still have those fears, Lauren? Are they still there for you? That fear of life and death? And I mean, for me, certainly, you know, I'm always catastrophizing about something that's going on with me. I think, you know, like everything that slightly hurts, I've made it into the fact that I'm going to die. And equally, you know, with the children, there's that fear, because like you say, you learn that actually we can be gone in an instant, you know, all these things that happen, and it really is quite frightening, isn't it? Do you still have to work hard? Is that settled for you?
So actually, this is something I haven't shared with anyone. Last year, in September of last year, I believe, so almost 2 years after Kevin was killed, I started experiencing heart palpitations and chest pain and arm numbness. And so I ended up at the ER for thinking I was having a heart attack, and they did all these things and I wasn't. And then I started having dizzy spells and basically couldn't even function at work. And here I am in this brand new position, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what did I get myself into? My superior is going to think that I'm not capable, and all these things were happening to me. So after the second ER visit, for the exact same things, just like a consistent arm numbness, dizzy spells, I fell at work, all this stuff, I ended up being diagnosed with a late onset PTSD from Kevin's death. And so I went back to therapy because I had kind of stopped going to therapy for a while, because I thought that I was managing my stress and processing my grief in a healthy way. And so after that, I started to speak with a doctor, and he basically was magic. I grew up in a family that we didn't even believe in Tylenol, you know, not believe in, that's not the right word, but like we had a headache. It was like, you power through it. Medicine, you don't need it, like in case it's just worst case scenario, unless it's worst case scenario. And I finally met this doctor who said, you know, when you've gone through a super traumatic experience, sometimes your brain literally releases all of its serotonin and is unable to replenish it in a way that it needs. And so he suggested being put on an antidepressant for a while, just a super low dose. I was very, very hesitant, and I'd never been on anything like that before. And I felt like it was a weakness, and I felt like, I had to kind of process that as well, because there was so much behind my fear of just medication and other things. But I ended up going on it, and it was a game changer for me. It really did give me that little bit of support and help that I needed, because I was in I didn't realize what a bad space I was in until after going to therapy and getting on medication for a while. I catastrophized everything. The second that Lawson would get sick, I thought he was going to die. And especially then you add in the pandemic, because the pandemic hit just months after Kevin was killed. And so there was so much isolation, and everyone was fearing dying in some respects. And I thought that maybe I was dying with all these things that I was experiencing, all these physical ailments. And so, yes, to answer your question, I had a really hard time. I actually felt that it had gotten worse. I was having panic attacks. I was literally waking my mom up in the middle of the night and saying, like, please come rub my back. I felt like I was like a baby again. And then I'd have to get up and go to work and function like a normal adult. And like internally, I was absolutely miserable. So I love Megan Devine. She talks a lot on her page and in her book, It's Okay That You're Not Okay, about anxiety after loss. And it is a real deal. I experienced anxiety before, but the threshold of anxiety that I experienced after losing Kevin and the way that I lost Kevin, it really took a toll on me, and it took a toll on my mental health. And I'm really appreciative that I was able to listen to a doctor and understand his scientific perspective of what had gone on in my brain and what I needed, even if it was just temporary support to get me back to a state of, because I was basically explain it was like you're just in constant survival mode. So your body is never like, it's never in a normal state. It's always heightened. I mean, and if a door would slam loudly, I would jump. And I had no clue what was going on. I'd never been like that ever in my life. So that was a really, really rough phase of my life. And that was September and October of last year. And then I kind of started getting back into a normal state and into a normal groove in November and December of last year. And now I feel like, again, I'm back to being the person that I would say has your typical anxieties about things, but I am not in that
heightened
fight
state.
or flight. I'm not in the survival mode anymore. And So
yeah. And do you know what? Thank you so much for sharing that, Lauren, because these things are hard, aren't they? And I think we get to a certain
really
point
hard
in our grief where we kind of go, oh, it's okay. So a certain amount of time has passed. I should be doing okay. Like we have these expectations of where we should be at a certain point in our grief. And I think a lot of people would say that after, a couple of years that, yeah, you should be all right. You should be dealt with it. It's all okay. And that's not the case at all. It can come back and bite us on the bum years down the line. It really can. And I think, there's this expectation on ourselves to be doing better and just to kind of own up to ourselves and say, actually, this is a problem and I need some help. It's very brave. It's very brave, but it's also frightening, isn't it? Because you just think, oh, this is hard. This is really hard. And the ongoing effects and these experiences that happen to us in our lives, they really do compound the rest of our lives, and as much as we do have a choice in how we respond to these things and it doesn't have to define us in a negative way, it's still trauma, isn't it? And that can manifest itself in very different ways in different people in the body. And I think we all need some help sometimes. So
we do. It's a very, I think, medication and how you process grief and what you need is such a touchy subject, and it's really sensitive and it's so individual. And I don't prescribe anything for anyone. It's like you have to figure out what is best for you. And like I said, I also had to process for myself that this wasn't a weakness. This is possibly something that I need to be the best person that I could be, because I was also being a terrible mom. I couldn't take care of myself. So how am I supposed to be taking care of my child? I was just continuously being impatient, and I was already at my threshold. And so I had no tolerance for anything else. And I had to just step back and say, what is best for me in this moment? This isn't a permanent thing. This can be a temporary thing, but I need help. And I think being able to acknowledge I need help, whatever that may be, whether it's group support, therapy, medication, whatever it may be, you do for you and you do what's right for you.
Yeah. Do you know what? And that's such an important message, isn't it, to share with people, because I think we're not very good at doing that. We think we should be strong, we should power on, we can get on with it. And when we're in it and we're dealing with it, we sometimes forget the enormity of the reality of our situation, because we're so busy getting on with our lives and working and kids and seeing people and putting on the brave face that we kind of think, do you know what, let's just keep going. The time will pass, it will get better, but time alone isn't enough. No. We need to work through it. And like you say, that can look like therapy, support groups, medication, whatever it looks like for you. Find that thing, reach out for the help wherever you are in your journey. I have clients that come to me 5, 6, 7 years in. There's no judgment, is there? There's no timeline. Finding what feels right for you. So, I mean, you talked about what has worked for you in your grief and what supported you. Did you do anything that was, you reflect back and think, that was a questionable choice? The things that we do to try and get us through our grief that in hindsight, you think, yeah, that probably wasn't ever going to help, but I tried it anyway.
I got really lucky in the sense that I didn't, although I will say that the two things that happened after losing Kevin were that I stopped exercising, which I wish I hadn't, but I did not. Grief takes every ounce of your physical and mental energy. And I commend the women that I know, like Emily Bingham, who took their grief and were able to use, that and put it into fitness and really, really propel themselves during that time. I was the exact opposite. I went from working out like 5-6 days a week to, if I worked out once or twice in a month, that was good. I just could not get myself to act. So that was something that I don't feel like was effective for me at all. I wish that I had gotten out and walked more and just kind of released the endorphins and the things that I really needed to process Kevin's death and to move through everything. And then the other thing that I did was I drank every single night, and I didn't get wasted. It was nothing like that, but it was like, oh no, mama's going to have a glass of wine or two every single night. And it was like that for the first year. And again, I don't think that that's the best thing. But for me, it's what got me through on the nights, especially being alone by myself and trying to, figure things out as a solo parent and as a widow. But it wasn't, I didn't go out and get crazy. I didn't date early on. And then kind of, cause I did have some girlfriends that are like, oh, I started dating like a month in to my husband's death because I was terrified of being alone. And this was the way that worked for me, but I really regret that. I didn't have any experiences like that. It was more just like those little day in, day out things that I used to do. Not drink every single day, drink on the weekends, or exercise 5 or 6 times a week and then not be exercising at all. And that actually took a really long, I'm still having a hard time with the exercise piece. It's gotten better, but it's still a challenge. And I think it's a challenge in different respects now than it was in the beginning from being exhausted. But being a widow and being a solo parent still plays a role for me. And then working full time in the exercise piece. And so I've been trying to be very intentional about getting that back into my life, because I know that that is something that's extremely helpful for my grief, my mental well-being, my physical health, all of those things. But no, I don't have any wild, crazy stories about any things that I did per se that were actually, I'd gotten some great advice from some widows in the beginning, because months into Kevin dying, I wanted to buy a new home. We lived in a home together, and we had already discussed that we wanted to sell it because it was going to be too small if we had baby number 2. And all of a sudden I just had this extreme desire to sell. I need to sell my house. I want to get out of it. It's not a home anymore. It's just a house. And I had a girlfriend of mine say, wait a year and see how you feel. Any big decision, wait a year, see how you feel. And any big monetary or like sentimental decision. And so I did wait on it. And I was really, really grateful that I did. I did still end up selling our home, but I stayed in the house for another 1.5 years after Kevin died. And so I felt that when I did say goodbye and when I did put it up for sale, that I was genuinely ready to move forward with that part of my life and move into a home that was more suitable for myself and for Lawson. So that was a really great piece of advice that I got from someone that ended up helping me.
Yeah. And I think it's those little nuggets that we need sometime, isn't it? And it doesn't work for everyone. Some people desperately need to get out in that first year, and that's the right thing for them. But for you, it was the right thing to wait. So that was, that piece of advice for you right there in that moment was very needed and helped you find peace with your decisions. I think
you brought such a great point that I think one of the hardest things about grief is that it is so individual. So what feels right to one person may not feel right to another, or like going out or dating early on or whatever, it may be right for you. There is no judgment here. I have none of that. I think we are the most judgmental on ourselves, and we worry what everyone else is going to think of us. But it really is about what feels correct inside of your grief. And so that's a great point, because I don't ever want to make anyone feel like what they're doing isn't right, that That's like not a thing inside
No,
of grief.
it's right, isn't it? You know, and even when you look back and you say, well, I drank every night and I didn't exercise so much, and I wish I hadn't done those things. But like you say, it's learning not to criticize and judge yourself, isn't it? Because you did what you did at the time to get you to where you needed to get to. And if that was what you needed, you know, I did a podcast with a lady called Shalini a few weeks back, and she spent 18 months drinking, taking painkillers, and just got into a very dark hole of depression, and you know, really withdrew. And it's, you know, we really can take ourselves to a dark place, and we do things that you know, on reflection we can think, why did I do that, and we can judge and criticize ourselves, but actually at the time, with what you were going through and how you were feeling, you did what you did to survive it. And that's the best thing that you can do, isn't it? And it will look different for everyone. And it's, as much as we shouldn't judge each other, we shouldn't judge ourselves. We should always come from a place of that kindness and compassion, because it hurts, right? And the loneliness is real, and having a glass of wine at the end of the day to try and get through that, because there's no quick fix to loneliness and grief, is there? You know, when you've lost your spouse and you're at home because you've got the kids and you can't go out, you can't, and you don't particularly want to either. So,
right.
I mean, how did you deal with that? I mean, obviously that you had a glass of wine, but that didn't continue forever, obviously. What is that, something that you felt you had to adapt to in time and learn to grow to like your own company again?
I was just thinking, oh yeah, you date yourself, you come home to yourself, is what I said. Oh, at one point, I'm coming back home to myself, because now I have to figure out what were the things. And Kevin and I were very independent. So in a lot of respects, I already knew the things that I liked, but then we also had these big goals and dreams together as a couple. And so you're processing that. You're processing the fact that you never thought you weren't going to be a wife. I always thought I was going to be married to Kevin forever. So then you're dealing with that as well, right? And it is lonely. It's so lonely. And I dealt with that by crying on the bathroom floor and falling apart, and going to friends' houses who I knew were a safe space to just kind of let it all out. Maybe they'd cry with me, or just listen, give me a hug, whatever it may be. Crying was crying such an amazing, beautiful thing, that I don't think that we give enough credit to. I would literally bawl my eyes out, and then I would come back together and be like, this is hard, and I'm honoring that, and my tears are demonstrating that, and it is okay to fall apart. I think I just gave myself grace, right? It is okay to fall apart. It is okay to feel lonely and be jealous of others who aren't in your position. And, you know, just like no judgment on the way that things are going for you. Because no, it is. And also being thrust into being a solo parent. I never, ever, ever. And I know that I speak to a lot of widow moms who feel the same way. Like, I never signed up for this, and this is so hard. And, you know, it's again, something that a lot of us feel guilt for even saying, but that feel it. And you're just like, oh my gosh. Like, I would get angry at Kevin. Where are you? You left me, you abandoned me, with this, you know, at the time, 14-month-old who's now regressing in his sleep. And now, you know, again, even now he's 3.5 and he throws all these attitudes, and I'm just like, you know, you're by yourself. Those are huge things to process. But again, I am someone who I lean on community. I'm extremely verbal. I have found writing to be so cathartic and so helpful in this journey. Just sharing that raw honesty of what works for me and what I need, and just saying, like, this is hard, not trying to cover a Band-Aid on anything, you know. My girlfriends who are newly widowed, I literally say, feel it all, feel it all. Just it can be miserable to feel it all, but feel it all, because if you let yourself fall to the floor and bawl your eyes out and scream and do whatever you need to do, you're going to get off that floor. You're not going to cry forever. You think you are. You literally think you're going to cry forever, but you're going to get up and it's going to feel, it's for, even if it's just temporary, it's going to feel better for a bit. And and I think it's truly because you're acknowledging like, this hurts. My heart is broken. I am missing my person. I'm so lonely. And I think that's one of the hardest parts of the journey in the beginning, is that feeling of just doing this all by yourself. Like no one knows what you need and you don't know what you need. No. And so that's really, really hard. I would find myself crying in the shower, crying on my drive to work. But I kept saying to myself, like, deep breaths, baby steps, feel it all. And I just kept doing that and connecting with people. For me, I needed, it didn't matter, especially as time moved forward. If it was widow sisters that I was meeting with, wonderful. If it was my mom, my sister, my good friends, someone that could just be there for me. And that was really, really nice, because it does just make you feel a little less lonely. That's for sure.
Just having someone to sit with you, you know, whilst you cry and you feel the things that you need to feel. It's sometimes you want to be on your own, don't you? Sometimes you want to share that by yourself. Sometimes you want to have someone hug you and hold you whilst you do it. But again, we're learning, aren't we? Like you say, we don't know what we want. We don't know how to navigate this. We don't understand our needs, our desires. We don't know that we need to have our grief witnessed at the beginning. You know, I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, what does that even mean?
Right. You're going to witness me on the ground, bawling my eyes out. No,
yeah. Like, what are you talking about? Yes.
Right.
And you know, the secondary losses, again, another term. I was like, what? You're learning all this new jargon, aren't you? All these other grief that you'd never even thought about, given time to, just living in an alien world that you have no idea who you even are in it. Your identity has been smashed, your confidence, your self-esteem.
Absolutely.
You don't know who you are, where you fit, where you're heading, what you're doing, and even if you're good enough to do what it is you need to do. And you need the people around you to hold you up. You really do. You know, we cannot do this on our own, and it is very much about connection and connecting with others. But in all that heartache, Lauren, in all the devastation, were there moments where you found like joy, where you found that you achieved something you never believed you achieved, and you were like, oh my God, I'm invincible, I'm amazing, I can do this? I mean, for me, I was very up and down, but my ups were up and my downs were down. And there were times when I honestly was on top of the world and I thought I could like achieve anything. You soon crash. But I also created some wonderful memories and had some great times with my kids in and amongst the hurts and the heartache. Did you have anything in your, you know, early days, in the first year or two, that were good?
I did. So the first couple months, I would not allow anything to come in that was joyful at all. I remember Christmas that year, 2019, everyone wanted to help decorate. Oh, let's put up the lights for you in a tree. And I was like, I don't want it. I genuinely don't want it. I don't want, and back to like the secondary losses and survivor's guilt that a lot of people don't talk about. I had so much guilt that I was getting to continue my life without Kevin. And so I was like, I don't want the tree. If Kevin can't have it, if Kevin can't see the sunset, then I don't want to watch the sunset and find joy. And few months into Kevin's death, I started saying to myself, okay, just find little moments. Appreciate an opportunity to laugh. Watch Lawson growing and smiling and talking and learning new things and be in the present moment. And I just grabbed on to just really tiny things. And sometimes I would feel guilt and sometimes I wouldn't. And I kind of ran with it. And then my big aha was probably about a year after Kevin's death. I don't know where I was. I just remember so vividly being like, I'm choosing to suffer. I'm choosing, this is a choice. And I'm choosing to not continue to love my life and live my life the way that I want to because Kevin's not here. And that's so not fair. It's not fair to him. It's not fair to me. I know that's not what he would want for me. And I had to come to those terms on my own because people over that year would say that to me. Oh, Kevin wouldn't want that for you. And I'm like, don't tell me what Kevin would want for me. But I did come to that space, and pain is natural. Suffering is a choice. And that's what I started telling myself. It's okay to feel pain. It's okay to feel discomfort, but I'm choosing to not smile. I'm choosing to not find joy in my journey. I'm choosing to not sit on the porch and watch the sunset like Kevin and I used to, and I'm not going to do that anymore. And so I really made a very intentional effort I took myself on my first vacation since Kevin had been gone, and my first 2 nights away from Lawson ever, and started dating myself, coming home to myself, figuring out what I wanted. What were the things that I still wanted to keep that Kevin and I had dreamt? What were the things that I was going to get rid of? What was I going to do for me? This position, this administrative position came about, and I decided to apply for it. And I started getting back into riding and mountain biking and kind of expanding on my friendships and touching back with some friends that we had kind of gone our separate ways after Kevin had died, and circling back and seeing if we could rekindle a friendship. And there were so many things, but I just realized from that point on, I get to have a choice, and I can move forward and just live in this state of despair and sorrow, or I can move forward and find joy and peace and comfort and love. I can love someone, I can love others, I can be present in the moment and enjoy my son growing up, all of these things, and have bits and pieces of pain and sadness here and there, because of course we're always going to want our person to be here, right? I do get so sad on days just thinking about what Kevin is missing out on, but I don't live there. I don't live in that space. And I think that's the difference, because living there is exhausting. And again, no judgment. Some people, it takes years and years to get out of that space. Some people don't ever recognize it. Some people recognize it really early on and don't want to be in that suffering space for a long period, like for a year. Some people might say that was really long, but for me, that is what I needed. And it was finally that wake up call that I gave to myself, like, this is daunting and exhausting. And Kevin would literally come down and be like, what are you doing, babe? This is like unacceptable. You know, I would never want this for you. And I want you to continue to live your life. And so, yeah, there were definitely intentional, very vivid moments that I remember having of just realizing, like, I still have the opportunity to live, and I get to be here, and Kevin doesn't, which is another reason why I should, not even I should, but that I want to be living my life to its fullest potential. But I didn't have like crazy highs per se.
No.
More than I would say I still get like this, like when I get intimidated by something, like even in this new position, if I get intimidated by something, I'm like, I've literally experienced some of the hardest shit you could ever go through. Like, it's going to be okay. Like, if this doesn't work out, it's going to be okay. You know? So in that respect, I do have a different perspective. I think I would have been I don't even know if I would have applied for the position if Kevin was still around, because I think I would have been really intimidated. It felt like I wasn't ready, not sure of myself. And so that has changed a lot. And I've had some low lows, but not, yes, when I was going through the PTSD and when I was going through the panic attacks, I would say that that was a really, really low space for me. But overall, in general, in the last year and a half, I would say that things have really, really lightened, and I've been able to manage the highs and the lows a lot more easily than I did in the beginning. In the beginning, it's just almost uncontrollable, right?
Yeah, it is. You can't make sense of any of it. And I think, you know, reaching that moment, that having that aha moment, that moment of clarity of, you know, I am layering my grief with extra suffering that I don't need to add on to it. Is huge, isn't it? And I remember having a moment like that myself. But I think part of that realization, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but for me was understanding that allowing myself to enjoy moments, to have joy in my life, to appreciate the good, to laugh, to have fun, to feel okay, didn't take anything away from me. It didn't mean that I don't love Simon anymore. It didn't mean that I'm not grieving him anymore, that I'm better now, that I'm over it, that I'm being disloyal, or that, you know, I'm leaving him behind. It's understanding, isn't it, the duality of grief. It comes back to that, doesn't it? We have to spend time in our grief. We have to spend time restoring our life. And it's that push and pull between the two. And they're both a necessary part of the grieving process. We can't live in our grief permanently. We can't avoid it permanently either. Right. And we have to have space in both, but understanding that it's all part of grief. And I think we very much talk about grief as the pain and the heartache and the despair and devastation, and it's hugely that, but it's so much more as well, because you know, I think we learn so much. Yeah. And it's opening your heart to those things, I guess, isn't it? And it certainly sounds like you know, you have grown, you have learned, you have developed, you've got this confidence. And I think it's that understanding. I think one of my greatest lessons is that, like you've just said, this thing has happened to me. And if I can get through that there's almost that belief that I can deal with most things probably that come my way. And I don't know what's next. I don't know what's on the other side of uncertainty, but I know that I'll figure it out along the way. And I think that's quite huge. I didn't ever have that. I never had that belief in myself. And I think it certainly gives you that, doesn't it? Because you do figure it out. You know, it takes a long time. It's not easy. It's ugly. It's chaotic. But you find a way through it somehow, very slowly, and bit by bit, you put it back together, don't you?
You do. I remember my girlfriend Amanda telling me in the beginning that you gain a new lens on life. And in the beginning, when she told me, I was like 2 or 3 weeks out. And I was just like, I don't want a new lens. No. I was grateful. I was happy. I loved the life that I had. But if you allow yourself, because that really is a big piece of it, right? It's genuinely allowing yourself to almost live the best life you've ever lived in some respects. And I couldn't even say that in the beginning without feeling so much guilt. And it's not because I'm not living the best life because Kevin's not here, right? And I said that it's not in spite of him. It's because of what I've learned from loss, that I have a choice. Like, I can give more, and I can love deeper, and I can be more present, and I can be more forgiving in a way that I think that it's just natural as humans to take advantage of when you don't truly understand how quickly someone can be gone, how quickly you can be gone. Yeah. And again, that was part of the suffering. Like, it was something that I wouldn't allow myself to say anything about this life being better in any respect after Kevin died. And then I would say probably within the last 6 months, I'm like, oh, but there are things that I started to do for myself that were better. And I wish Kevin could be here to see it, right? That, like, I've allowed, because you do have a new lease on life. You do have a new lens on life. And I've become someone that I'm even more proud of, and that I'm hoping that Kevin sees from afar. But a lot of us, I think, stunt ourselves because of that guilt, because of the fact that if you're living your best life, if you're doing things that make you happy and smile again, that somehow we're not honoring that person or getting them, or we are, moving on without them. And there's so much that we can learn about grief and understanding that that's not how we do things, and that there is no moving on. There's only moving forward, and we can carry them with us, and we can choose to do that however we would like. But that's a lot of grief is reflection and intentional effort to move forward in a way that you want, that's positive, that you sometimes have to push through those guilty feelings to have.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we're not ready for certain ideas, for
Right.
certain beliefs.
Absolutely.
And I always say to my clients, you know, when you hear something that maybe doesn't quite resonate, or it's too soon, and you just think, oh, I can't cope with that. That doesn't feel right to me where I am. It's almost saying to yourself, learning that, you know, right here, right now, that doesn't feel like my truth, my reality, or a possibility, right, even for me. But just being open enough to say that in the future, that could be a possibility, a truth, a belief for me. But, you know, I'm here where I am now, and this is what's going on for me, but I'm open to it at some point in the future. And I think it's learning that, isn't it? Because your story changes as you go through your journey. It really does.
It evolves. And I think it's so valid for everyone. And maybe valid's not the right word that I'm looking for, but I that's such a wonderful point that you bring up, because I was not ready for it. I'm sure you weren't ready for it. We were all in that space at one point. I remember seeing other women's Instagram accounts, meeting other widows that were like 4 or 5 years out. And I'm like, who are you posting these, you know, positive quotes on your Instagram page and saying that love is possible and a better life is possible? Like, and sometimes it really agitated me. So that's such a great point that you bring about, that like, you may not be ready for these truths, you know, and they may not ever be yours.
Yeah.
And so again, like, the things that I tell my girlfriends is just hold hope, like you said, that it could be, if that's what you want. Hold hope to knowing that it's not always this hard. You're going to remember to breathe again. You're going to be able to smile again. You're going to be able to laugh about the memories that you have before you're crying and all of those things. But especially in the beginning, that does not look that way. And it did not look like that for me. I did not just evolve into the person that I evolved into now right away. And this is 2.5 years out.
Exactly. And I think, you know, it's still, you know, 2.5 years is still fairly early, isn't it? And I think sometimes we think that we should be further in our journey. And, you know, you've shared so much, Lauren. You have. It's been amazing. And I'm conscious of your time, but I just could you quickly share sort of what your grief does look like for you now? You know, how are you honoring Kevin in your life? How are you coping, you know, with your grief, and how are you doing with that 2.5 years on?
Yeah, I mean, some days are still really hard and tears come, but life is lighter. The acceptance of Kevin's death is not as heavy as it used to be. I have learned that it's okay to start a new chapter and to explore what that might look like. So I started dating a while ago, and bought a new home, and I'm journeying that life with me and my son and figuring out what that looks like for us. And we put in a memorial bench for Kevin, and a lot of our friends, it was just Kevin's birthday last weekend. So we went up there and we hiked to it and we toasted and we, you know, had all the happy birthday stuff. Something I was just telling a girlfriend of mine the other day, and I swear this was like on an unconscious level, but Kevin's love language was acts of service. He was the type of person who would bring me a coffee every single morning to bed, and would take care of Lawson, or make dinner when he knew I was busy and having a hard day, or like come rub my feet or rub my head. And he was just someone who wanted to make you feel good. And that's how he was with his friends too. And that was not something that came naturally to me when we were married. It was very much something that I was like, okay, I'll do it because I know that would make Kevin feel good. But it's so strange, because I've found that, like I said, probably on an unconscious level, that I've taken on that love language of his. And I think it's a way of me carrying him forward. I love doing things for other people. I love bringing someone a dinner. I love, you know, helping where I can. And like in my new relationship, if I'm the one to bring the coffee, or if I'm the one to make dinner, or I'm the one to do something that can make them feel cared for, I do. And that's something I was just talking about the other day, like, wow, I feel like this is a way of moving Kevin forward in my life and still feeling his love through me. But there's just lots of things, you know, like I said, dreams of owning real estate. He wanted to do that. He wanted to invest in real estate. That's something that I still want to do for me, for us. You know, raising our child a certain way and taking him traveling and, you know, just exploring all of those kind of things, talking about Kevin. I talk about Kevin every single day. And my first date that I ever went on, when I was, you know, at dinner, I said very blatantly, like, my late husband will always be a part of my life. And whoever I move forward with will have to understand that I will always share space in my heart for my late husband, and then whoever is there too. And I've been very, very fortunate to have met someone who has no problem with that and has allowed me to carry Kevin forward in a really wonderful way, in a way that I need, where it's, you know, still posting pictures of Kevin, still talking about the memories that we had, still talking about his impact on Lawson's life, even though Lawson was very little. But those are the things to me just keep him alive, because I saw something right after Kevin died, a post someone had made saying, I won't let you twice. And I so truly believe that. It's like, I don't feel indebted to do that. I want to do that. I want to continue Kevin's legacy and just do things that would make him proud, that make me proud, that continue to keep his memory alive.
And it's so important, I think, to us, isn't it, to feel like they are honored in our lives and they come forward with us, and that they're not forgotten. And it can very much feel like they have been. Sometimes they get talked about less frequently, and there's less to
we talk about them less frequently.
Yes. And it's hard, but I think, like you say, to reflect on the things that you loved about them and to bring that into your life, and know that they have shaped who you become. They have taught you things that you hold dear in their life and in their death, actually. And it can feel like a really lovely way of honoring who they were and the impact they had on your life. And you're right that they're always going to have a very special place in our hearts. You know, that love does live on. It changes, it evolves, but it's always there. But it's, you know, Lauren, it's just been so lovely talking to you. It really has. You share so much hope and honesty and rawness and wisdom. I know it's going to help so many people resonate with everything that you've said.
Oh, I hope so.
They will. And you know, I hope, you know, moving forward, that you continue to do well, and you know, that things go well with dating and your new home and your job. And just continue to shine, because you're wonderful. You really are. So thank you so much, Lauren. Mama. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.